have to get up and do it.
Oh, why?
Oh, never mind.
No, it works. Hello.
Hi. What?
Oh, I see it.
Are we
It's
on?
recognizing.
Yeah, let's.
Oh, we'll be back
Are we
soon.
live?
No, we're good, I think.
Are we gonna redo the thing so that we have a smooth thing for the YouTubes?
Doesn't that mean we're live?
Yeah, it does. Hello everyone, welcome to our Ashes of Creations live stream. I'm Margaret Crone, your community marketing lead, and with me is...
Steven?
He's very giggly today.
Sorry, no.
And what do you do here, Steven?
I am the creative director and chief executive officer.
Sweet.
Nice.
Yes.
Oh, he said like the full thing this
the
time.
whole
Yeah.
thing.
And
I am Jeffrey Bard, lead game designer for Ashes of Creation.
And today we're going to be going over node stuff. We kind of kicked off the month after our creative director's letter and after our live stream from that, talking about nodes and putting out some content, and we put out a video. So we'll be talking about all of that, but and then we also have some questions. So we actually went to the community. We had you guys submit some questions. We had our content creators submit questions. We had our French, German, Russian communities all submit questions, as well as our English community. So we have a whole slew of them to go over. And we're going to try to do our best to get through as many of them as possible today. But for our quick updates, we want to talk about some of the things that have been happening. As you knew, we were at GDC. So there was about a week that we were a few of us were off doing that stuff. So, Steven, you want to talk a little bit about GDC and what we were doing there?
Absolutely. We had a great time at GDC. Myself, Margaret, Jeff went, Brian, our new lead producer went. We had our other Jeff there.
Yeah.
That's the one that people might not recognize.
The hidden
in the
Jeff.
photo.
The hidden
Yeah.
Jeff. And then who else did we
Mark
have?
was there.
We had Mark,
Kevin.
We had Kevin, lead.
I think Mark people didn't know either.
Oh yeah, they're on they're on the site. But
Mark's a good guy.
People were like, these are the three new people I didn't know. They didn't know who Jeff was. They didn't know who Mark was. And Mark's not new.
No,
Mark's
not
not.
new.
He doesn't go on camera. He
Right.
should though.
He's-
People said he looked like a yoga instructor.
I think
kind of
he
is.
might do yoga. No, he does karate.
He does a lot of martial arts.
He does martial
arts,
arts, yeah.
yes.
He's fit.
No, we had a great time at GDC. For those of you who don't know, Game Developers Conference, really it's the largest conference of game developers in the industry. It's in San Francisco. It's almost entirely business to business. We had a lot of great meetings, that revolve around the future launch of Ashes of Creation. It was like back to back from 8 a.m. to like 9 p.m.
Yeah, we did not stop talking all day long. It was good though. It was
But
really
I will
good.
say that it was actually one of the smoothest GDCs I've been to, because I didn't have to run around everywhere. They came to us. It
Yes,
was nice.
that was very nice.
But
obviously.
we were booked back to back every hour, and I had to be like, all right, we have 10 minutes left in this meeting.
And some of
It's
those
like a reaction
discussions,
item.
Go, shoot.
you will learn about some of those discussions in the future, right? We may have some
As
press
they bear
releases,
fruit.
right?
Yeah.
As they bear fruit, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that the other ones that you guys might notice on the community and marketing side are, cool giveaways and things of that sort. Because wouldn't it be neat to have like a full set of peripherals that are all Ashes themed?
Wouldn't that be cool?
Some things like that. So there's definitely some contests that Toast and I have been talking about, and we'll be, trying to get some cool things in the works for everybody. So I think that kind of covers GDC.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff that we can't really talk about it because it's business to business stuff. We don't really want to, throw people out there when we're not fully committed to things, right? Our next thing is Stephen wanted to talk a little bit about some of our positions. As you notice, we've been putting out some posts that are like, hey, we're hiring, come check it out. So if you see something on there, people who might be good for a position, have them apply.
So we are really stepping up the hiring. In fact, our next hiring phase has just begun. I think we have 17 positions we're trying to fill within the next 30 to 60 days tops. We want to be getting those positions filled. We're going to have a release for those positions as well. They're obviously on our careers page at intrepidstudios.com. Now, for you guys in the community, the best way you can help us and the project is really to get out there and tag people who you like in the industry, work that they've done before, and say, hey, Intrepid is hiring. This is a great new MMORPG. If you haven't heard of it, send your resume. We are looking for the best. I mean, I'm unabashed in that sense. I think that we should, tell everyone
we will
possible.
look for talent anywhere.
Absolutely. And for us, this project is huge, and we need to hire quite literally hundreds of people.
Yeah.
So these hiring phases will be pretty aggressive moving forward, and you'll be getting regular regular updates and in the community, but as well as our normal ways to reach out to developers, talented people.
I'm going to have to schedule lots of new hire photos.
Yes, absolutely.
I've been trying to make sure that those things are kept up to date on our site. So, you can always check them out. Although we will be revamping some of our website stuff as well, but we have some higher priority tasks that the web teams are working on currently. Now let's hop in and talk about Node stuff. So I think the first thing that we want to talk about is the video that we released. We're actually going to play it again so we can all relive the experience. We'll chat a little bit about that video. We'll talk a little bit about the articles that we've posted. We're not going to go into super depth about them because obviously you can go read them and check them out. We want to get to your questions so that we can answer those in regards to your follow-up questions from the articles. So first and foremost, let's check out the video.
My name is Tad Ehrlich, and I'm a senior environment artist here at Intrepid Studios. Primarily, I am in charge of building the objects in the environment, building out the environment, placing objects, materials for the objects, and anything that is not a person or a creature running around, I take part in that. The goal of the node system was to make sure that every place was special and unique, to make sure that every node you go into will offer something different in a different way in a different place, and then have that same system facilitate all the races. Whether you go into a node that's human, go into a node that's elven, or one that's dwarven, each one will be supported by the system. And not only that, but also it provides procedural randomization throughout the entire world. So roads, bridges, all that stuff, it can all be randomized and made different every time you go through this area, and it builds up.
When you enter into a city, you're going to notice that the buildings, the placement of NPCs, the services that you can access are unique to that particular city. Part of the tool that Tad has been designing really has been to accommodate a procedural method by which each city can have its own identity.
One of the key things that I enjoy in games is a sense of discovery and a sense of exploration, and I feel like having a system that provides so much variety means that when I find a new place, it's always going to be special. I'm always finding something new and different, and it isn't just the same cookie cutter stuff just strewn all over the world.
As a player, I've experienced a lot of MMORPGs, and it's interesting, every one I've experienced has the same type of railroaded structure that you go from quest A to B to C. And it's really, something of my desire that I've had to create a system that would be dynamic in the creation of your world, to kind of mix the civilization building aspect with the RPG element. I just think it goes hand in hand that if we extend this role-playing game mechanic into the development of cities, that creates really interesting gameplay that players can participate in. And part of what this node tool provides is for each city's character and identity to be unique to the players that develop it. Part of the technology that's being developed here at Intrepid Studios really relates to our desire to create a world that is developed by the players. And this allows you to see in real time the changes that you're affecting on the world around you, and not just log into the same static game every day. This takes what the community is doing and it presents it in real time to the players so that they can see the effect of their changes.
We want to make it special for when a player finds a node and a node is grown and builds, that it's different from every other node in the world, so that they can claim that this node is their special place, and we know that someone on the other side of the world isn't going to have a node remotely like it. I would say the thing I like most about working at Intrepid is the fact that it's such a small, cohesive company. Everyone has to interact with everyone else. There's far fewer layers to get in the way of actual production. It's about making the product and getting it done and making it as good as we can. And I like the simplicity of that.
And so that video went out. It seems like people have been enjoying it. I did get some feedback that people would like to see more of the tech stuff and talk a little bit more in depth about it. So we'll try to do our best as we move forward for future ones. Our next one is going to be the housing tool. So I'm excited. We've already posted that in our article. If you've read our article, I have that little bit at the end letting you know what's the next one. So we're going to be releasing the Dev Diaries videos once a month. And that's something I have been really excited about. I've been working really hard on this project. And I'm glad Steven approved it.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yay.
I do want to do a shout out to a few of the other developers who have helped up. Obviously, all the people who are on the interviews and talking, and they're very nervous. Ted was very nervous, but he killed it.
No,
he killed it.
They did.
Couldn't even tell.
Honestly.
Yeah, and he was really nervous, but he doesn't come off as nervous at all.
No.
I think that Bacon helped with some of the recording. What are you laughing at?
I'm just like, he was really. I thought he did. He did a really good job. He didn't really appear nervous to me. A lot of the guys, you're such a good question. Giver that you kind of interact and let them kind of bring their guard down and comfortable about it.
Forget the cameras.
Yeah, my goal is to be like, don't worry about the cameras. Think about it as like we're having a chat about the things that you do and the things that you love.
And for you guys, obviously the intention of these videos is to give you a closer look and a more in-depth look on who's behind the project from a developer standpoint, actually making these key systems. From a design standpoint, we give these developers the objective with these tools, and then they go and they theory craft how to make these things with the engine they're using, with custom proprietary technology that we're developing, and we can reveal some of that stuff to you guys as the viewer, but we can't get really too far in depth on how exactly these systems work because that is proprietary information
and competitive,
and it's competitive.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. Take it with a
Steven
grain of
goes
salt.
to me. He's like, I worry a little bit about these articles that we're putting out because we're putting out all our systems, and I was like,
that's the flip side of being an open development, right? I mean, obviously, speed to market is something that's important, and I'm giving you guys just a little bit of discussion on the business aspect of it, but speed to market is a little bit of the important side of things because what we are doing is something that really hasn't been done before in the market, and it hasn't been done because other projects are unwilling to take the risk. They want to stick closely to what has been tried, tested, and true, and that's why we end up with kind of a stagnant market that we have as players. We want to see something new, but you have to understand, usually there are investors in other projects and boards, and they have to approve those risky type of endeavors, and they don't do that unless another project comes forward and takes that risk themselves. So just to give you guys a little bit of a look inside that. So.
And for the recording of these, Bacon helped with cameras and stuff, cameras and audio, and I was basically asking questions and monitoring audio, and Tristan did the editing. Tristan's still alive. I saw some of the videos people put out. I'm like laughing so hard. I sent that video to Tristan, by the way. He was dying. So I think, we do have a lot of other things in the works. We're trying to get some cool stuff out to you guys, and we hope that you all like them. So I'm glad people are liking it because I was like so nervous. It's a new series,
it's
right?
It's a great idea. It shows well. It gives people a look at what's going on behind the scenes, and that's what everybody wants. So I think it's a win-win for both of us.
Yeah. Well, it's always nerve-wracking when you put out a new series because you already have like some of the other video stuff prepped.
People actually like this. I don't know.
They're like, okay, is the second one actually going to come out in the series? Yeah. Now let's go chat. We'll chat a little bit about some of the news posts that came out. We did have quite a few this month, but primarily I think the ones that people were focusing on were the basics, which covers what are nodes, how do they work, the node types, vassal nodes, content within that provides experience, and zone of influence, as well as the next article following that, which is the advance and destroy, how you build and develop a node, and then also developing areas.
I did want to touch on one key point that I noticed in the chat. There were a lot of people who questioned with regards to some of the footage that was shown in that video. The Nodes Tool video was recorded back in January, and there's some older footage you might even see in future videos, and that's because in attempts to showcase these things, we have developers tend to record their development sessions so that we can come back later and put it into a marketable format. So
I have been planning I guess we'll pause what I was doing. I've been planning the Dev Diaries series since the first month I was here, so I proposed a lot of things. I might have overwhelmed Steven, I don't know. And we started working on it. So I think a lot of it was like I was writing all the scripts, and I was getting, well, not scripts, but like bulletin scripts of like who's going to be in what scene and that kind of stuff. And they were capturing footage. So a lot of it is people capturing footage of their work while they're working, getting people who are doing animations or modeling or, working on different products to be, while they're doing the thing, recording it so that we have it ready whenever I need it for the videos that are coming out later. It's kind of an interesting thing because we're working on it and then the video comes out later. Does that make sense?
For sure. No, it makes sense. Just wanted to give people that insight.
And the second article that we had was the Advance and Destroy. It covers how you advance and build up a node, developing areas, node stages, gaining experience from vassal nodes, cultural experience, events and accomplishments, and then also how you can delevel and destroy a node, which would be talking about node atrophy, node deleveling, and node destruction. So we have covered a lot of those things. It's all up to date. If anything changes, I will be going back and editing that based on what design has. So, and I'll let you guys know. There was one adjustment that did happen to an article, to the secondary article regarding, I think it was the deconstruction stuff.
So we had mentioned in one spot, I think, where it was a potential that after a siege, nodes could delevel instead of being completely destroyed. That was obviously a topic for design that we had discussed very early on in our design talks, but we decided to go in at least our first iteration of testing sieges that it will be completely destroyed upon a successful siege.
So that would be if you're a metropolis and your siege is, and the siege is successful, that metropolis will go down to zero. No willingness.
At least for now, right? Like there's still a lot of runway left for us to make changes and adjust things. But right now, this is what we're happy with.
Yes. And everything we discussed with you guys from a design standpoint, I mean, these are our design decisions moving forward into alphas and betas, but there is always the opportunity for change. That's the purpose of testing. That's why you guys are going to get in and test these systems, because we're going to watch those design logs. We're going to see how these systems interact with live players, and we're going to make adjustments as necessary to make the gameplay fluid, fun, and what you guys want.
Okay. And I think that's kind of all I want. I don't want to go into details about this. I highly recommend you go over to ashesofcreation.com/news, read all of the articles there. We'll continue to be putting some out. The next article in that Know Your Node series is going to be specifically about scientific node types, and that will be going more in depth about that, which has a lot of information that no one has seen before. So I'm excited to share that. I know the first two were kind of like, some people are like, well, I know some of this already. Well, I need it on the site to be in a place that like everyone can go, new players can see it. And I think a lot of the content creators had already mentioned this is definitely for like the new people that are kind of coming in. But there were little tidbits of stuff that was interesting that was for our more OG players, I think.
OG players.
OG players. I don't know. I'm old school. I just like to say OG. So let's get into your questions. I think we have a lot of them. We have content creator questions. We have French, German, Russian, and English questions. So we're just going to go through them all. First of all, I'm going to go through the content creator questions. And if you're in Twitch chat and you're asking questions, Toast is being lovely over there, and she's tossing me some of your questions that are different than any of the questions that are here because she knows what's all on the list. So I will be asking those intermittently. So first of all, we have the Jalan, always. He's always the first.
Nice.
He says, here's an example. Members of Guild A are citizens of both Node A and B, and the mayor of Node A declares a war state with Node B. Are the members of Guild A now hostile towards each other, or do guild membership supersede a node's war status?
So there's definitely an affiliations hierarchy that exists in game based on a number of affiliations you may have, right? There's node citizenship, there's guild, there's alliance, there's party, there's raid, there's family. All of these types of affiliations have a hierarchy, the highest of which is your node affiliation. So your citizenship is your greatest superseding relationship, which means if you were a part of a guild and the guild has multiple nodes in which its members are citizens of, if there was a war between two of those nodes, the members of those nodes would be first and foremost citizens who defend that node even against their own guild members.
Think about it like if you were if me and Jeff were both part of a thieves guild, right? And we're underground doing some cool things, but we are all both live in different towns, right? We still are part of those towns as well as part of the guild.
Right.
Right.
I hope that kind of helps.
And the town represents my home, right?
Yeah.
And so we always want home to kind of be the most important thing for a player. Organizations come secondary to that. So, as a guild member, you're going to have to make choices in terms of like, how do you deal with that? And we think that's interesting.
Yeah. I kind of view it as like, I mean, you think about, the American Civil War, you have a nationality, right? And that's your quote unquote guild affiliation. But then you have your home, which is like your statehood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, you can have a separation along lines that puts family against family.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate, and we hope that, there's great cooperation
You
between
smile?
things.
Smile on Steven's face. I can't contain it.
Sorry, but
He's
that's the type of objective we're having.
Our next question is from Richie, and Richie says, will there be a way to see what type of node you are contributing to, military, economic, etc., starting out? That way you can focus on developing one type over another. This is covered in the article, but I did want to add it in there just because I think, others might have that question as well. But read the article.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
So when a node first starts, you'll be able to tell what type of node
Yes,
it is
okay.
based on the NPCs that are there. So whenever there's an encampment, you'll see
types of
Yeah.
NPCs that indicate the node type.
Yeah.
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 So I mean, there will be some indications you're not going to see on the map, like, oh, this is a scientific node. You're going to have to. Your contextual clues will kind of tell you what's going on, but we're not going to be like super prescriptive
so
about
if
that.
you come up on one and you see a camp and it is a merchant, you'll know that is an economic node in the starting. So if you want to help make that economic node grow, you'll start doing stuff and helping
But
them.
you'll really have to pop that to level 1 to see that.
Right.
So
Yes.
there's some.
You won't see it at nothing is
At
seen
zero,
at level
yeah.
0. But at level 1, you'll see indications based on quests, based on merchants, based on NPCs that are present. All of those things will give you an immediate indicator. And it's not just about making a conscious. I mean, yes, you make a conscious decision whether or not you want to aid that node by doing activities around it. However, those activities will also relate to your focus in the game. So, an economic node is going to have more economic-oriented kind of quest lines.
And opportunities.
And opportunities, exactly.
Gotta get that money. No, I'm just kidding. It
Are you, though?
it
Are
could
you
be
kidding?
resources, though, I guess. Shays wants to know, if a metropolis locks out its surrounding vassal nodes at stage 5, preventing them from leveling up, and then later that metropolis is destroyed during a siege, how is it decided which of these surrounding stage 5 nodes turns it into a level 6 before the other?
So there is a hierarchy that exists within the node structures, and that is maintained even when parent and vassal relationships are established. And if that parent relationship is removed through a successful siege, the hierarchy remains and becomes detached. Like you may have, let's say, a stage 5 node has 2 stage 4 nodes beneath it in the hierarchy. If the stage 5 node disappears, those 2 stage 4 nodes will become independent of one another, 2 separate quote-unquote nations, right? And they will be competing for control over the other from that point forward, right?
Yeah,
so there's going to be a process.
Nothing is going to pop immediately
Right.
to that next slot, right?
Yes.
So if there's a level 5 node and a level 6 node, the level 6 node goes away. That level 5 node doesn't automatically get
Right.
promoted to 6.
It
There's
didn't
still
bank that experience.
right.
Yeah.
That experience isn't banked. It's not there. You're going to have to earn that experience to pop it up. So it becomes a race at that point.
It becomes a race that has, and we kind of, I put this in that Advance and Destroy article, which was events and accomplishments that allow players to influence the modifier that's placed on incoming experience into a node, right? So, for example, if you have the parent node of those 2 stage 4 nodes disappears, those 2 stage 4 nodes are likely going to be at odds with one another when it comes to trying to reach stage 5 first, right? And there are many ways by which the citizens independently can try to subvert the advancement of the nearby node through declaring war, through competing quest lines that revolve around patron organizations and or guilds. There's, achievements with the raid bosses, with the society systems. All of those things can go to hinder or excel the collection of experience based on the citizens of that particular node. While we're a non-faction based game, there are many systems that allow for these pseudo-factions to appear and give players identities that can be either cooperative or adversarial. It's up to the players.
Okay. I'm going to grab a question from the Twitch chat. So if you're live, you can ask those as well. The question is from Nixel TV, and they want to know, and I'm sorry if I butcher people's names in advance. Do you plan ahead what happens to nodes when you need to do a server merge? Or are you planning you guys already know what you want to do in regards to server merges?
So there's
Sorry.
two scenarios
I think
when
we've talked about this before.
we have talked about it before, so I'll go over very quickly. There's two scenarios when it comes to the potential of server merges. Obviously, every MMO would like that we don't have to address those and that the servers will stay healthy forever. But as a contingency, we have two scenarios. The first scenario is where one server will become the dominant server, and the other server will have the player population merge into the existing structure and development of that server. Right? That's the first. The second is the two populations of the servers will join a new server that has a fresh start, so to speak. And those are generally the ideas. You'll keep your progression on your character, you'll keep your assets and whatnot, but the node structure will be reverted to zero, and the placement of buildings and properties that are owned will be reverted. You'll keep schematics, you'll keep materials necessarily, but it'll be a fresh start.
Those are kind of what you're thinking,
right? Those are the two kind of ideas that we have when it comes to server merges.
We still need to game that stuff out. It's a very challenging problem, but we'll get there.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to more questions from our content creators, we have Agalos who's asking, given that the world size has been stated at 480 square kilometers with 103 nodes, can you tell us the approximate land amount that each node state would encompass, town, city, metro, etc., to give us an idea of scale for each city?
Yeah, probably that's not information I think that we would want to give out. Honestly, I think we want to keep that a little bit more immersive and not as mechanical, I guess, in its sense. There is definitely, obviously, an amount of area that is accommodated by a single node. But that area is large. It's going to feel very, very distinct in that sense as well. What the specific kilometer by kilometer size is, I don't think we want to really give that out.
It goes from small to big.
It goes from small to big to bigger.
The last thing I want to do is have like players pacing out step by step. Okay, we know that this node's like parameter is this far
and
out.
There's 103.
Yeah, exactly. We want more you to see your actions get. Basically change the world, and you can react to that visible change.
I'm gonna let you know, Steven. They're gonna figure it out.
No, they are.
They're gonna walk.
They will.
And
This will all be on a wiki somewhere.
For sure, it will be. For sure, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
However, one of the great things that I have as an MMORPG player is not knowing everything at the start of a server. And sometimes, unfortunately, people find all that stuff out and they post it online and whatnot, which is fine. But I think it's interesting if I get to explore and find things out myself a little bit.
Yeah, there will be a sense of players being the first to see stuff, and we definitely want that to be part of the game and part of the history of the game.
Yeah. So our next question that's here is from Daedalus, who says, since we know that nodes will offer class and augmentation progression services for players, will character progression, class, or augmentation be gated behind the level of the node? Is it expected for players to travel between different node types to improve their class versus augmentations?
Yes, it will be gated. There will be world development that's necessary in order to access particular content. This is part of the incentive tree that's used in order to encourage cooperative development of the world, right? Each destruction and advancement each have their own set of incentives, right? And what the player's interests lie will determine their course of action, whether they want to build the world or they want to destroy and change things. So the idea is to make sure we place those incentives in each category. Yeah. What was the last part of that question?
The last part was, is it expected for players to travel between different node types to improve their class versus augments?
So that is related to citizenship, right? So you will travel to other nodes if you're like, hey, I don't like these augmentation types that are available in this city. I like the augmentation types that are available in this other city, right? You'd give them up based on your citizenship, based on where you travel. So it's not about like going and collecting all the skills and abilities from all the different nodes, right? It's more about this city has a set of skills available that I would like to have, and so that's where I want to put my citizenship.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, it's important to note that these nodes, they have conditions that can be set by the citizens and the mayor that relate to diplomatic relations, whether it be conflict or cooperation with other nodes. And in that choice, there lie certain progression points available based on how those things organically become created. So as a citizen, you may need to travel to a adversarial node and accomplish some type of objective in order to advance in a particular quest line and or class progression portion to access certain things. Yeah.
I'm going to grab another question from chat, which is from Zane Redding, and they are asking, what are your thoughts on the node degradation length? How long do you think it will take to go down to node level? Will higher level nodes take longer to degrade?
Yes. Yes.
I don't know if we have a link that we want to provide.
The actual
right
time span is going to be related to the amount of time it takes to actually build up a node. It will be a shorter amount. We want players to be active and doing things to help the health of their node. The exact timelines we don't have right now until we start getting real big populations in the game.
Right. That's absolutely right. And then in addition to that, part of the infrastructure we have set up on the server with regards to player interaction and activity will relate to what's currently happening on the server. So we want to find a median between how many players are present, how much activity is happening on the server, and then that will relate to the degradation rate, the advancement rate, and those types of things. So that it could change per server.
It will definitely change.
Yeah,
per server.
absolutely.
That's actually cool.
Yeah.
Makes it a little bit harder for some people to gamify it, though, because I know that they like doing that. Our next question is from Diggs, and they want to know, can we get a clarification on how underrealm nodes interact with surface nodes? For example, if there were one underrealm metropolis, would that mean that there could only be 4 more metropolises total, or can there be 5 underrealm metropolises and 5 surface metropolises?
There can only be 5 metropolises under realm or over.
Combined?
It's a collective pool. And then there is interaction between the surface. So surface nodes or underrealm nodes will control space in both, right? So if you're in the underrealm and you have a node that advances, there's going to be bleed over into the surface area. So that's why those two land masses are combined in the sense of influence and zone of influence, basically. So yeah, there's only 5 metropolises.
So if you have, let's say you have a metropolis in the underrealm, the above realm area that is encompassed by that will gain that. Okay, cool. Just want to reiterate that. It's a cool question.
And that might be a little bit of a departure from our design in the past. I know originally, 2+ years ago, we were discussing how those would be independent of each other. But I think as we further defined the layout of the world map itself, it made more sense for those to have some interaction and influence that's combined.
It's also more interesting, I think, when you don't necessarily know what's going on below ground, and you have to really be aware of what's happening on both levels.
And I think the other portion is that one of the ideas that I was chatting with the environment team about from an art direction standpoint was to include influences of the underrealm that are seen above ground if it's an underrealm node that's influencing the above population.
That'd be very cool.
So you have those bioluminescent kind of influences that start to reach out into the world above.
I was just going to say how this, if you're new and you don't, you're coming into Ashes of Creation, you don't know what we're talking about, the base layer that you come into as a player is kind of like the normal realm that you would see in most games, and that kind of looks more realistic, whereas the underrealm is like the underground layer of our world. So we have 2 layers, and that is more like bioluminescent. And I'm just imagining a city being so beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
The art direction for that is kind of
Again, we're trying to be high fantasy here, and we really want to capture that sort of fantastical sense that you are not on Earth, that this is actually a new world.
All right, our next question is, we have a lot of questions to go through. I think we're going to be going, we're going to get copyright infringement. We have a lot of questions, so we're probably going to go longer than an hour. We have Nimihoy is asking, if I'm a citizen of a vassal node, why should I remain there and not go to the parent node or higher level node? If higher level nodes give access to higher hunting grounds, why would I remain in a lower level node instead of getting more experience by going to that other node?
So as a vassal citizen, you are contributing to the development of your parent node should you reach the apex of contribution to your your vassal node. So you can still go to the hunting areas and you'll still have, perks as a vassal citizen. There's going to be a perk structure that's present for vassal citizens as well. The most important thing when it comes to the relationship between parent and vassal nodes is that there is an up-down relationship between services that get established for the citizens of each. So for example, one system is work orders. Citizens of a parent node can request certain work orders that can only be performed by citizens of vassal nodes. And there needs to be a vassal support structure for these parent nodes in order to fulfill those work orders. So work orders can only be established for a particular stage of vassal node, and those relate to a whole array of different things, from certain quest lines to crafting certain certain weapons and armors and items, to processing particular gatherables and raw resources, to the building of particular structures. There is a relationship and a structure between the support of vassal nodes to parents and vice versa. Also, as a vassal citizen, you're going to be eligible for those work orders that can have certain perks associated with them and give you an advantage from an economic standpoint as well, being the only ones to kind of fulfill those things.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also a lot of other questions involved there too, right? Like, there may be a specific kind of resource that's available in that particular area that you want to stay close to. You could just like small town living. There is,
I'm a country girl.
it may be a lot more expensive to live in the city, and you want to keep your costs down. There's a lot of stuff there, and we also want to sort of maintain a little bit of friction there between the vassaled and the sort of in control node too. So there's a lot of stuff involved there. There's definitely going to be reasons to want to be in a vassal node. There's going to be reasons to try and usurp the master node. So there's a lot of stuff going on.
There are some questions regarding that coming up, so we'll get into more details of that too. So Atropos wants to know, could you talk about the types of behaviors or habits that you hope that NPCs within nodes may demonstrate that can improve the authenticity or immersion of the node as a hub of civilization?
Yeah, that's a big question. There's a lot of things that we're wanting to accomplish when it comes to NPCs and their interactions with player characters. A lot of those systems relate to kind of the relationship that player characters can establish with NPCs through repetitive visiting of the city, through accomplishing certain feats through the questing system and or social organizations, and that can change the way you interact with NPCs that are present and merchants along those lines. If you establish a reputation in the city, NPCs are going to know that. They may have a different greeting. They may have different price points for you. They may have revealed quest lines and or story points that you hadn't seen before earlier in a relationship with them. I mean, those are our goals when it comes to how we can establish the AI for NPCs to relate to characters and make the world more immersive in that sense. Have a lasting reputation and history that relates again to why players want to keep the advancement of these nodes a thing and defend this property against would-be invaders and or destroyers, because you have a vested interest in making sure that what you have built there from a reputation standpoint, from a building standpoint, from a traits or whatever it is, everything relates back to that node, and you need to make sure that that keeps advancing.
And I mean, each of those NPCs will have their own path, like pathing and what their story is, right?
Yeah.
So like,
I mean, not every NPC,
not every,
right?
yeah.
But
that'd be great.
That would be amazing, and I would love to do that.
Not every, yeah.
Maybe if Steven gets me 30 more designers.
So many of them. So
I'm trying.
But yes, I mean, it's we really want to make sure that the city feels alive, right? That it's not just alive with players, but it's alive with NPCs who have their own wants and needs, and that react to what you're doing, what the node's doing, and kind of the state of the world.
Okay. Our next question is from Verlis Wolf, who wants to know, can you provide more information on the relationship between vassal nodes and parent nodes? Specifically, are there ways to prevent a parent node from taking over your node? This was kind of going into that.
Right.
So I think we touched on both points in that question through previous questions.
Yeah. This was specifically more like, if I'm in a vassal node and the parent node is trying to take over, if I'm in a node that is potentially going to be a vassal node of a parent node, is there a way for me to block that from happening?
Yeah, I described that. I described that a
it?
few questions ago with regards to the ability to modify incoming experience that can either slow down the growth of a competing node or not. Mm-hmm. That would be the main method, but there is no you're not welcome here. Do not
we cannot be taken over.
Yeah, we cannot be taken over. That's core to the way these cultures kind of expand. The territory of the node expands. There is an algorithm that we use when it comes to the expansion of nodes that relates to nodes wanting to move closer to the cultural borders of other nodes. That's like the first and foremost. Civilization reaches out to other civilization. That's like the intrinsic kind of backbone of trade and economy. And then also like moving towards the coast. That's another aspect of what nodes want to do, because that again is a source of kind of trade and the ability to move goods around the world.
I think this is a good follow-up to a question that's coming in from chat, which I think we've talked about quite a bit already in previous live streams as well, which is from Altador saying, will nodes encapsulate? Sorry, I don't know, I can't talk.
Okay.
A large part of the sea if they are on the shore. Will the whole sea be part of a node? or part of nodes?
So there's definitely territory that can move out into the sea because there is sea content that's available. It's not going to, reach out into the outside of the coast. It's going to try to stay along the coastal area, right? But it will encompass a portion of that sea out. If you
there
look
will
at
be
how-
international waters,
Yes,
but then there will also
exactly.
be
Right.
waters that are
I was trying to
within
think of what I
the
was thinking.
border.
yeah,
International
that's a good way to
waters is
word
the
it.
one.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch on that last question, the one before this one, where there's not, like Steven said, there's not a hard way to prevent other people from doing it, from taking over your node, right? But the responsibility is on that node to prevent others from leveling faster than you, right? Like that's kind of the goal. If you're not paying attention, if you let this other node grow bigger than you, there's nothing you can do to stop it at that point, right? But you have to do it. You have to be proactive about it.
Yes.
Okay, so we still have a lot to go through, and we have a short amount of time, so
Sorry.
we might go a little longer today, but I'm going to
okay.
try. So our next question groups are all from our French community. I don't have the player names for these.
Bonjour, mes amis.
Bonjour, comment allez-vous?
Comment allez-vous?
There we go.
Ça va?
we can kind of do a little French.
Nous parlons français.
Un peu.
Should I ask them in French?
Yeah, ask them in French.
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
I translated them to English. You're fine. So I'm going to ask these questions. There's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for them. And they said, will there be any hidden quests? I already know the answer. Such as being able to resurrect a dragon. Whoa. If you have 5 necromancers in the party, then integrate it as a defense system for your node. This is a very specific
That got
question.
really specific. That escalated quickly.
Now I'm imagining like this group of like necromancers summoning a dragon.
So
It's
what's the
kind of
core?
horrifying,
The
actually.
core question was:
The
Are there
core
hidden
questions
quests?
are there hidden quests? Yeah.
There are hidden quests.
There are hidden quests.
Yes. Whether or not there's a quest related specifically to necromancers and raising the dead of NPCs and having them
Undead
fight for
dragon
you,
to battle?
I don't know of any quests along those particular lines. However, there are hidden quests throughout the world that really kind of promote exploration and your ability to maybe even reach things first and kind of have that.
This
ability.
is sort of like in my wheelhouse where I love hidden quests. I love being able to discover something that nobody else has figured out yet. The hope is that we'll get to year 5 and there's still some stuff that we launched with Ashes of Creation, our first launch, and that haven't been found yet. So
I'm going to say this: there's something in Apocalypse that no one has found yet.
That's true.
That's true.
Moving on. Can we have more details about military nodes' functionalities? What can we expect from class combat training? And I think I'm going to go over the military nodes in an article. It'll be like a full article about it, but I don't know what all you guys would want to share regarding that. What more details would you guys want to share about the functionality of military nodes?
So, military nodes, as we kind of stipulated in I think it was the first Know Your Node series, is that they kind of augment your ability to perform in combat, whether it be PvE or PvP, and that ability really stays in the zone of influence of that node. I mean, we kind of want you to encourage those players who are being trained from a combat standpoint to kind of perform around the node and do those things around the node. It relates to kind of passives like your gear proficiency, the ability to utilize particular passive abilities that kind of augment your combat capability.
Yeah, and each node type will also have its own special ability or special building and superpower. So we'll talk about more of those things in those articles. So stay tuned for those. You can follow our social media so that you don't miss out on them. The next question that we have here is, will we be able to organize our troops positions during assaults like in Total War, so we can create squadrons led by other players?
Not like Total War.
Total War.
Because that's like an RTS. Yeah.
It would be cool. It would be a different game.
Yeah.
But we do want to give.
making Total War.
I do enjoy that game.
We want to give
series.
raid leaders and people who are running player run groups the tools to be able to pull that off. Right, but we will not be prescribing everybody stand arm to arm and march forward. Right,
Rank,
that will
You
be
could do
rank
that.
and file companies.
You could do that if you talk to each other.
yeah, right.
So,
That will be up
yeah.
to individual commanders to sort of organize those.
I've done that
groups
many
way.
times
I
in
have
sieges in the
too.
past where we have everybody line up, right? I would even go before the siege because I was going to record and put gold on the ground for positions, and I was like, get in your positions and stuff. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
No, but there won't be a Total War aspect to controlling things. There are definitely the idea is to have the NPC mercenaries that are present during battles. And one of the games I played in the past, which was Lineage 2, if you were a castle owner, you could place down mercenary tags in the castle area that would then spawn into NPCs and the location there. And they would have a specific AI, like, you had a cleric
Defender,
NPC, or you had and they would move even routes. You had mobile or stationary. So, I mean, I liked that. That was kind of fun and cool. I think that from a mercenary standpoint, we definitely want to have AI that's kind of built in and makes sense from a siege perspective.
Right, of course.
But it won't be Total War overview.
Yeah, where you're like moving stuff. Yeah. Okay, next question is
Cavalry through them.
about node.
I know, doesn't feel good.
I'm excited. About node creation, will we have the choice about where each building will be, or it will be automated? So kind of like when you're building up a city.
So there's two components there. There's the procedural aspect, which players do not have agency over. There are certain buildings that are by default present when a node does level up, and those building locations are determined by the procedural tool that we're utilizing. In the developer tool video, you can see that a little bit. And then there are locations, which are basically building footprints that will exist from a construction standpoint, that the community will have agency over through the election of a mayor and the determination of what buildings and services they want to offer. They can start building projects, which will then spawn a constructible location that will have quests related to material acquisition that the citizens must participate in order to construct that video and render its services accessible by the players.
Yeah, and we've talked about that in previous live streams, and there will be an article talking about governments and going into a little bit of details about that too.
So again, just like base level stuff will come with the node. Players are going to be choosing that stuff. Specific buildings will be what the mayors decide to build. And that can include things like banks or that kind of thing.
Yeah. So next up, we will have. Will we be able to find tribes such as elf tribes in the forest with whom we may be able to create a commercial road after increasing our reputation with?
So when you say tribes, I'm assuming they mean NPCs, and I would call those specifically minor races, right? So there's a tier of interaction with NPCs, right? You have major race NPCs, and those are the people you're going to see in cities and perhaps the prospectors outside of the cities and whatnot that you relate to. There's minor races NPCs, and these have their own unique cultures. These are the centaurs, these are the fae and whatnot that live out in the wilderness. There are the antagonist NPC structure, which are going to be monsters and perversions of nature that relate to corruption and the ancients. Those are present, and then there are pets and stuff. So yes, there are minor races that will exist. I mean, that's part of the lore, it's part of the world, it's part of the explorative process for you as a player to kind of reach out to those and make relationships. Whether or not you can have like a particular trade, I mean, those will exist within the quest structure. There's going to be quests.
Yeah, so I was going to say it's more related to quest stuff than it would be like they are not major players in this world, right? The players are the players of this world. And so we want to make sure that players feel that way.
Yes.
There will be some choices to be made regarding them, but it's not going to be things like creating trade routes to them. It's not going to be, financially viable really to do that. So it's not going to be a thing that exists, really.
Your nodes will take over their lands.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, takeover is a harsh phrase.
That's why
they'll interact with them, right? And that interaction will yield additional services and quests and whatnot that will take you out to those locations.
But you could take.
But you're not going to subjugate their culture into yours and rule with an iron fist.
Why
unless
not?
you want. Not.
Yeah. Why
unless
not?
you want.
Unless you want.
I want to be the tribe leader, the chieftain, Chieftain Maggie.
There you go. Margaret walks up to the centaur and is like, "I am the captain now."
No, just kidding. Okay, we saw that NPCs on Siege Weapon would join the fight once the walls are destroyed. Will the NPC participation to node wars, or will NPCs participate in node sieges? And will they have strategic impact?
Yes
Basically,
and no,
yeah.
right? Like there will definitely be NPCs will participate in castle sieges. NPCs will participate in node sieges. The extent to which they do depends on the health of that node or that castle.
Yeah.
So
there's definitely interaction also between the castles and nodes, right? That's a core feature of the castle system. Like castles exert pressure over nodes to pay them taxes. Those taxes then can be allocated to specific core game systems. One of those core game systems is the defensibility of a node, because it benefits the castle to make sure that nodes are a high level and have citizens so that they keep paying taxes. Some of those benefits are the allocation of mercenaries. They're the allocation of specific buildings that become available, the heightened defenses on walls and gates, the additional I can't think of it now, top of my head. The schematics that are present for different siege weaponry from a defensibility standpoint, and also granting nodes the ability, certain abilities over wars between different nodes. There's a lot of systems that go into how castles interact with nodes that we want to achieve, and those systems can be seen through.
Yeah, and I think what they're asking is more so about NPCs. So, can an NPC use a siege weapon? Can they man a trebuchet and help defend?
So siege weapons are going to
play a more important role.
Siege weapons are going to be skill based, and NPCs, have a particular AI that isn't necessarily very skillful.
Again, we want players to be the heroes here.
Yes.
We don't want NPCs.
Yeah, I just think that that's more of what their question was. Now we're moving on to our German community, and we'll ask a few.
Guten Abend or Gute Nacht. Sorry, it's like 9 o'clock.
Yeah, it is nighttime for them right now. But hi. So our first question here is, will players be able to steal items, etc., from other players? So, will I be able to steal players' freehold items or things of that sort?
So you can't just steal stuff from other people. What we do have is, there are death penalties and there are repercussions for the loss of a siege. And those really relate to raw resources and or the certificate system. So when a player dies, there is a portion of their raw resources that relate to you losing those to the other player, a portion of them. And if you were to have, let's say, storage on your freehold, you could lose a portion of that storage if they were raw resources to another player or players should they destroy your freehold. Same is true for raw resources that may exist within the storage facilities of nodes and or caravans or on your person. Right.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
But not gear. I'm sorry, just to be clear. Not gear, not completed items unless you were raw material, unless you were corrupt. Now, if you have corruption score, which is gained through the killing of other player characters, then that score doesn't go away until you die. And if you die, there's a chance to drop completed gear.
Our next question is, since religions are a part of the node system, would that hint to future crusades or missionary work?
Certainly. That is, the history of kind of religions fighting against each other is a real one, right? And there's, while we probably won't be doing crusades, right? There will be conflict between the different religions who want what?
No, nothing.
There will be conflict and points of friction between the different religions. Different religions will want the same thing. Whoever gets it first wins. And so, yes, some kind of conflict is inevitable.
One thing that might not be present at launch, but is an interest of mine to incorporate in a future expansion and or update, would be how religions relate from a patronship for particular nodes and offering incentives for that node to either cooperate with other nodes that follow the same patron deity or to react in a negative way through war to destabilize nodes that don't follow necessarily the patron deity. Now, I wouldn't call those crusades, but they definitely have a religious undertone.
It's more like missionary work. It's almost like that.
Really aggressive missionary work. Yeah.
And actually, missionary work may end up being part of the religious node's government. Going out and trying to get converts to your religion may be part of that system.
Right.
Such an interesting thing to put in.
Yeah.
Moving on to our next question is, how can small guilds build up a node compared to larger guilds? What's going to be the difference here?
Yeah. So, really, I think the key point, and I know we've had this kind of question before, guilds don't necessarily build nodes, right? Communities build nodes, and guilds are a smaller portion of what a community is. But you may have a guild that might go out into the world, and at the start of the game, they go out further and explore deeper into, into the world, and they establish like, encampment or something. But I don't think guilds are going to be able to compete with the gross activity of the server at large to kind of establish, town cities or metropolises. They can get the legwork moving. They can establish that smaller, node to get advanced a little bit, and that might then attract more community activity to come and experience the quests that have been unlocked in that area and whatnot. But when it comes to guilds building nodes necessarily, it really is a larger effort than just what guilds can do. And we don't want to make it so that, any particular guild can have influence there. What smaller guilds have really unique influences over larger guilds is that in the guild progression structure, there are guild skills that we've spoken about in the past. And as you progress your guild through these levels, you can choose to either be more expansive in allowing more players to join, or you can be more acute in allowing specific skills and abilities be given to your members. There are unique quests, activities, and or objectives that become present during a lot of systems that are more tailored towards the small and focused guild niche than there are the larger ones. And then there are also certain activities that are limited in number of size that can participate, which are more geared towards smaller organizations as well.
All right. Now we're going to move on to our Russian community questions. The question that we're going to ask is, how many buildings can I build on my freehold?
Jeff, do you want to take
I don't know exactly. It's like 5 by 4.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if there's a specific number of buildings because
Depends on the type of building and what level.
Part of the
building,
system.
right?
Well, part of the system, Jeff, is that you have kind of architected with the freehold system is a space game, right? Is not space in the sense of going into space, but rather like allocating space within the footprint of the freehold parcel as is necessary to accommodate growth in structures that allow access to higher tiered processing power or business abilities, kind of leveling up.
It's all about finding efficiencies in the space that you have, right? And so, yes, you could probably put a good number of buildings down that just don't make sense together and don't really give you a whole lot, right? It's really more about finding the synergies between the buildings, between the environment that you've placed your freehold down, and kind of getting the most bang for your buck out of the space that you have.
I like Arctics in chat says playing Tetris with buildings.
Yes, that's exactly what it's like.
That's a great way to
I was
kind of
going to
put
use
it.
the example of, inventory space and how you have to in certain games where you have to be like, okay, this weapon fits in this space and this ammo fits in here. And so it's kind of
But it's also about
land.
this weapon makes this shield better, right?
Yeah.
Like if it's right next to each other and in the specific configuration.
Yeah.
So
hopefully that kind of answers your question. Will cities have unique names? Can we change them?
Cities will have names. They're not going to be They're not going to be player They're not going to be player created names, but they will be player chosen names from a list of available
based on the race type and based on
and
that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. In the last article, you said that nodes will be completely destroyed if siege is successful. Are there other options? Can we only delevel a node without destroying it?
No. Through a siege, you destroy a node. And currently that is the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now moving on to our English community, we've got these ones are already we've talked about.
Got it. Well, hi Russians, Dobry den, I think.
Our next questions are from our English
Did you
community.
just swear?
No, it's like hello.
It's from Reddit. This is from Cal Spartan, who says, the blog post states that vassal nodes will be unable to declare war against their parent nodes or other sister nodes under the same zone of influence. Will there be no way for civil war without renouncing citizenship and moving elsewhere in order to declare war? And this was one of the top highly voted up questions.
Okay, got it. So will there be a way for civil war without renouncing citizenship? No, there is not currently a structure that's in place that allows for sister and or vassal parent nodes to declare war on each other. And I don't have any plans for that currently.
Yeah. The best thing to do is to revoke your citizenship. That will undermine the tax base of that vassal thing.
Activity, everything.
Go find a node that will help you destroy that node, and then go try to take it over after you've blown it up.
Yeah.
But the idea is that a true civil war isn't really possible without players making an effort to kind of get rid of their citizenship first.
Right.
Our next question is from Zerial Acheron, who wants to know, what constraints does a parent node impose on its vassal nodes in contrast to free nodes? And what freedoms does a vassal node still enjoy after it becomes a vassal?
So the majority of restraints really do not apply to the general citizenship population. As a matter of fact, a parent and vassal relationship actually increases certain activities and availabilities for the citizens to participate in. The major restraints really only apply to the mayor and what duties and capabilities and choices they have available to them. Most of that relates to diplomacy, and kind of by default, the vassal nodes will adopt the diplomatic relations of the parent node. There are also specific tax rates that apply. There are there's a few other key systems that relate to what mayors are capable of doing, and those get superseded by the government of the parent node.
All right. And our next question is from Red Spectre and also Aaron from Facebook. So both.
Hi, Aaron
both
from Facebook.
Hello, Aaron.
Reddit, Red Spectre and Aaron on Facebook said, according to the AOC Wiki, underrealm nodes and nodes directly above them are related but do not exist in the same zone of influence.
Right.
How are surface nodes and underrealms related, and how do they influence each other? So I guess we've kind of talked about this a bit, so maybe talk about how they relate to each other more.
So, as I said previously in the stream, we kind of departed a little bit from the shared, from a shared zone of influence and how those nodes relate to the above ground and below ground. So that might need to be updated on that old wiki. But what was the question then?
How are they related?
How are they related?
So
How do
you've
they
got a
influence
node
each
down
other?
here
Yeah.
and a node above
How do
here,
they
right?
influence each other?
This zone of influence is independent from this zone of influence. It's not like they're part of the same zone of
Right.
influence. But what ends up happening is we consider adjacency, right, in 3 dimensions.
Yes.
So this one would be adjacent to this node.
Correct.
So this node, if it hits level 3 and this is level 2, could take over that
Similar
node.
to how this node
Exactly.
here above here could affect this one.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry. So that's correct in saying that they do have independent zones of influence, but that they can take over the other ones. Yes.
Yeah. Cool. We have Briar8990 from Reddit says, I don't know why I read it that way. Will there be portions of the world map that are outside the node system, spaces in between where actions do not affect another node?
Not really, no.
I mean, kind of in the sea, but I mean, even that's still influenced
But
by it.
that's-
Right,
So
because
it's-
like if a citizen goes out and does something,
Yeah.
so coastal areas of the sea are falling under that zone of influence.
Mm-hmm.
Deep water sea stuff out in the international waters, so to speak, that I don't even know actually because we have 2 scenarios. The scenarios are it does, and we do have a separate expansion rate that relates to international waters. Right? And then the other point of that question is it might not. That's something that we're going to experience in Alpha that we need to test. Alpha 2 probably will test that particular question for the sea stuff.
But on land, not so much.
No, on land there's no area that will fall outside of a zone of influence.
Okay.
The only potential caveat there is international waters. But that's a question we need to answer in Alpha 2.
And even then, like, it will still be influenced by nodes regardless of what that question is. So.
Yes.
And our next question is from Reddit Adizarek and our Facebook friend named Josh. Can we get more details on how the level of a node impacts the level scaling of nearby bombs? So how the level of the node impacts the world around.
I think we've discussed this before, but to be real quick, I mean there is a spawn table, and there are spawners that exist in the world that spawn monsters. And the spawn table has allocations for a wide range of available difficulties, levels, so to speak. As a node advances, it may increase and level up some of those portions of the spawn table and even introduce potentially new levels that are present. The idea behind the Ashes of Creation world is traditionally in MMORPGs you experience a circular kind of development for worlds that lend inward away from where the starting areas are, and you have these kind of zones that become obsolete because the player demographic has moved on to the higher level content. And that's really a bad thing for MMORPGs, because part of what makes MMOs so great is you have a highly social dynamic. And if an MMORPG's lifespan has progressed far enough, that demographic, that social aspect has moved inward to the world and left new players to enter a basically void area of social dynamics. So what we wanted to do when it comes to the implementation of nodes and how it influences areas that exist. We want to have a diversification of all of all relevant content and monsters that are capable of being fought everywhere by any level, so that as new players enter in, they're entering into what will likely be the most developed location near the starting areas of certain nodes.
Yeah. We also make that, so there's a couple things that kind of results from that, right? Is that a level 1 player could travel potentially, if they're careful, anywhere across the map, right? Like there will always be some path of relative safety that they can find their way through. And the other one is that
relative safety.
Right, relative
until
safety.
Stephen comes out of the tree and
yanks your sandals.
Banhammer somebody.
But it's also that each node kind of has its own ecosystem in terms of like what these creatures are, and that they will all kind of make sense related to each other. So it's a little bit difficult to be really specific in answering this question because it's going to be on a node by node level. But the big takeaway is that there will be a gradient of leveled mobs from 1 to whatever our max level is. Throughout each node, right? There will be something for everybody in each area.
Right.
Okay. Cool.
No matter what the level of the node is.
The next question is, you
all
guys are they're very hands
yeah.
oriented, and if you notice, I'm not yelling at them today. We've moved the microphone.
Yeah.
It still will pick up them doing that. But
Sorry, Maggie.
little less harsh on your ears, hopefully. I'm sorry for those who are wearing headphones right now. Our next question is from Reddit as well, which is Dendata asking, will there be node-bound gear or recipes like armor and weapons that identify the culture theme of a node? I think the cultural.
So I don't think we've ever actually mentioned this before, but part of the system that relates to kind of guild-based gear as well, like having personalized gear that represents guild tags and whatnot, will also be a system that's present in the node system as well. So if you're a citizen and you want to, don the shield of your node, you'll have your node's crest present and available, and you can represent that way.
Carry
and
your
if,
banner.
If the node were to go away, then so would the ability to use that particular appearance.
Cool. Our next question is from Malsta69 from Reddit asking, will quests in particular nodes ask players to travel through the lands, i.e. other nodes, to complete, or are the quests geographically limited to the node? I think we kind of already...
Yeah, so it's definitely not geographically limited to the node. We want to be sending you kind of all over the world. There's plenty of places that we, it would be very limited for us to just send you in quests that are local, right? Like, to make quests interesting.
There's going to be quests that send you local, and there's going to be quests that send you far. And you're not restricting that, so...
We have one coming in from Twitch that's new. This is from High Priest Cannon. I like it. Will nodes near the 3 starting portals have a slower level of progression than nodes deeper in the world due to the masses spawning next to them?
So there are 4 starting
like,
divine gateways.
I was like, there's more.
And the Tolnar starting.
And it's almost certain, since node development is based around activity and population movement, it's almost certain that nodes in the starting areas will see development faster than nodes out further away. Now, that there is a potential that one server has everybody get together and like, hey, we're just going to run straight out into the continent and just start an outpost away from. I mean, that's a potential.
Yeah.
So we can't say definitely that it will be that case, but
it depends on your server. It depends on the culture of your server.
And again, we want this stuff to feel organic and feel like this is a natural reaction to what players are doing in the world, right? So we're not going to bias anything in that way unless it becomes super problematic, and I don't expect it will be. These nodes will rise and they will fall, and that's okay.
Our next question is from Cyclopsic, and they want to know from Reddit, as you've stated, leadership will be able to customize what gets built, and the predominant races will influence the architecture. Beyond that, how different are the metropolises or higher level nodes going to be? And can you give any details? Are we going to see additions like canals running through port nodes, multiple elevations / tiers, like in Minas Tirith, or are we going to be seeing essentially the same layout just with different player influences as stated above? I think every metropolis will be different.
Every metropolis
they will not
be
have the
different.
same layout.
every node will be different, whether metropolis or not. And no, they will not have the same layout. When it comes to the introduction of player agency for geographical markers like rivers and canals potentially, but rivers, there's not a plan to change that based on node progression. That's going to be based on where the node progresses.
Right. If there's a river, that river will be there.
Right.
Yeah, we'll just have a bridge now.
However, the procedural process of the node tool allows for things like bridges or potentially canals to be randomly placed and different each time a node develops. That's part of what the node tool accomplishes, that tech for procedural rendering of these assets.
Yeah, not even. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
As nodes level up, there's a sense of history to that specific instance of that node, right? So we get to level 3, there's a merchant here, and it gets to level 5. There's going to be a shop in that general area,
It's
right?
upgraded.
So there will be a sense of progression as a node grows. But then when that node is destroyed, we start that whole process over with a new layout, new configuration, new stuff going on in that node. So every time that node builds in that same spot, it's going to look different.
Yeah, but you could potentially have that metropolis be there for a really long time if you continually defend it and it grows, and you're gonna have this history. It's gonna become an iconic piece of I guess
That world.
architecture in that world. Yeah, and every node will be different from one another, as well as when they like re-transform and
Right.
get to deconstruct it. So I hope they answered your question. The next question we have is from Twitter, from Alusier, and they want to know, since node types are predetermined, how will vassal nodes of different types affect the node under the same parent node? Say a military parent node level 6 has an economic vassal node level 4. Will that level 4 node still have the advantages of any other of its kind, or be a military node?
It will retain its identity. So level 4 military node will remain regardless of who kind of controls that area, regardless of who it's vassal to, it will retain its military sense. Where that sort of kind of changes is when you've got a metropolis level that grants its superpower. That usually affects everything in that node. So there will be some aspects of an economic node that can be found throughout that whole region.
I just saw myself going like this.
You do that a lot.
I know. I'm sorry.
describes it.
One other thing to I think maybe the idea of parent and vassal nodes needs to be a little bit more hammered home with regards to it expanding what's capable for the citizens. It's not very restrictive.
Right.
It doesn't take away services or prevent services. It just takes those services in a different direction. Had that node continued to advance and become a parent, right, it would have parent-oriented services. If it becomes a vassal state of another node, then it has vassal-oriented services. It's not restrictive in the sense that it takes
still has
away.
it still has its stuff. It just also gets benefits from its parent.
Yes.
Yeah. I think whenever we get into the government and citizenship and things of that sort, we can kind of delve a little bit deeper, and I'll try to make sure that those articles also encompass some of that, because it seems like a lot of those questions were related to that, and I think some of those will be answered in those systems, but I'll try to make sure that it's very clear. So that kind of wraps up all the questions that the major questions that we got. There's a lot of questions. We got through them all. I removed some of the ones that were repeats that we could find.
I'm glad I don't look at these questions beforehand, because I have this like fresh take when it happens.
Jeff looked at them though.
That's why, and I think it's scary for Jeff too, because he's just like, you're saying everything.
It's against my nature.
We're always like, what is Steven gonna say? Hey, I'm all for it. It just, it's up to you. So I think that kind of wraps up all the questions. We have those articles up on the site, so definitely go check them out. We're going to be having a scientific node type coming up next, and we'll be going into all the others, economic, military, and divine as well, and then going into government and citizenship. So we're going to cover a lot of those systems, and if there's other things that you'd like to hear from us about, please let us know. I know people have asked about classes and races and all that kind of stuff, and religions, and those are all on my list. So if you have other ones, be sure to let us know.
There is going to be
Uh-oh.
wait, I'm just thinking right now. I'm sorry. I think it's next week that the next cosmetic set comes out, right?
Oh,
Is
yes.
it next week? And in that cosmetic set, you will see the Nakua race, actually.
We'll have a little bit of lore bits coming out. I think
Right
we're
behind
hoping to
Nakua. But I know we haven't, I don't think we've shown Nakua before. Maybe we have, I don't know.
shown a little
But
bit
stay tuned for that
It's
as
very
well.
like tribal, coastal tribal. It's kind of really cool. I think I'll have an article that goes out that will talk a little bit about the little lore blurbs and stuff of that. So definitely check it out. And yeah, we'll let you guys know whenever those items are swapping over, because I know people were asking about the next item set. So I think that's kind of it. Our final reminders are that we will have another live stream next month. We'll let you guys know in advance when that's coming. Usually we're trying to aim for the last Friday of every month. The last Friday of this month, or the next month, I actually am on PTO, so I don't know if we're going to swap that date up a little bit or not.
You're not allowed to leave.
If not, then maybe we'll have a toast taken over and she'll host.
A toast stream.
A toasty host.
Do we have to bring toast to that stream?
I think we have to.
Actual toast.
And we have to throw the toast.
Oh, we should do that cinnamon toast.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. She said that seems messy. So thank you to Stephen and Jeff, of course, for joining, and for all of you who are watching.
Thank you guys.
We appreciate, we
Best
love your
community ever.
support and patience in this giant MMORPG that we're creating. Everybody here is so thrilled to really be creating these systems, because at heart, as you guys know, we are MMORPG players, and we get very excited to share with you guys on stream, what we're building and all of these systems, because they answer the call we have had for many years from a game that we want to play.
Make that game.
We know that
finally.
You guys have that call too. So thank you for tuning in, and thank you for your support and love.
Yeah, we're planning to have new articles every week, so stay tuned for those on our social media, and you can follow us here on Twitch so that you don't miss out on our future streams, as well as if you go check on over to our YouTube channel, subscribe to us over there. We'll have this video up over on our YouTube channel, and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram will keep you up to date on all of the things Ashes of Creation. I also try to put little lore tidbits on Instagram, so you should definitely go follow us on that. So we'll see you guys next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
I don't know what Steven's doing.
I was